Hello and welcome to the first in a series of tutorial videos on my YouTube channel. This is going to be a tutorial on Ableton, or as much as I can actually demonstrate and do, because I'm still learning Ableton myself. This video series comes at the request of a few people, one or more people on the Audio Games forum, wanting to learn how to use Ableton. So I thought, well, it would be beneficial for me to provide that resource so that people can watch these videos and know how I do it, basically. So let's get started. This first video is going to be on how to make tracks and how tracks are laid out, and basically the various layout of the program itself. So I'm going to Alt-Tab to Ableton because I have it open here.
Untitled, Ableton Live 12 Beta Arrangement Grouping, Track Headers Preview, Main Collapse.
Now what did we hear? We heard Untitled, Ableton Live 12, and yes, I'm using a beta because 12.1 is due to be released. I don't know when, but 12.1 brings a whole host of accessibility features. We get access to automation and things like that, but that will be covered in a later video. So what did we hear? We heard the title of the program. Then we heard track headers tree view. What are track headers? Track headers are essentially your tracks. So if I go back to the top of the window here,
Delay collapse list. 2 MIDI 1 MIDI expanded level 1.
You'll see we have 2 MIDI tracks.
2 MIDI 1 MIDI expanded level 1.
There's one there.
2 MIDI expanded level 1.
One there. And we also have 2 audio tracks.
3 audio expanded level 1.
One there.
4 audio expanded level 1.
And one there. But then we have a couple of extra things. We have effects sends.
A reverb collapse level 1.
We have a reverb.
Delay collapse level 1.
And we have a delay. And then at the very bottom of the window,
Main collapse level 1.
we have the main track. So the main track is basically, well, it's the master track. So if any of you are musically inclined, you'll know, or audio engineers, or like, if you understand music or audio, you'll know that the master track, or in this case the main track, is where everything goes, everything is played. So if that has effects on it, then everything will be affected. If it has, how do I explain it? If it has a filter on it, like an auto sweeping filter, then all of your other tracks, so your MIDI tracks, your audio tracks, if they've got any data on them whatsoever, they will be affected by the effect you have going on the main track. So the main track essentially is your control track, your master track. It chooses it's basically everything. A main track is everything. Okay, so you need, and look, if I try to delete it,
Delete command not enabled.
it won't let you, because you can't. If you get rid of the main track, you've got nothing, because that is essentially all your outputs, all of your outputs, and I can
Main grouping,
control
Q out combo box 1/2 collapsed.
Q out.
Main out combo box 1/2 collapsed.
I've never actually looked at these main out.
Track volume slider 0.
There's your volume. So that's your master. That's going to be your master volume to control everything. You can adjust independent track volumes, but if you do it on the main track, it will be the master volume.
Preview /Q volume slider -6.0.
Preview.
Trackpad slider C.
And then there's your master pan.
Waveform vertical zoom checkbox checked.
That's your waveforms, which you don't need to worry about if you're blind.
Waveform vertical zoom level slider 1.008. Optimize arrangement type checkbox not checked. Optimize arrangement width checkbox loop risk grouping 3 arrangement loop stop.
Those
Optimize arrangement type checkbox.
those optimize. I'll mute this for now. Those optimize arrangement height and width things. They are purely visual. You don't need to worry about that if you're blind.
Optim loop 7 arrangement loop end grouping. Arrangement controls grouping. Set locator button. Previous locator but next loop automation lock envelopes checkbox.
I'll get into locators in a later video.
Track headers preview main.
And here we are back at the track headers. So important thing to realize is master track. That's your main track. Then you've got some effect sends here. We've got
delay collapse level 1.
Delay, and you'll notice these are labeled A and B. They aren't functioning right now. You would have to put something on those tracks, or you'd have to... I've never actually messed around with them, so I don't know.
A reverb collapse level 1.
Reverb.
4 audio expanded level 1.
And then here are your tracks that you will actually use. So your 2 audio
3
tracks
audio expanded level 1.
and your 2 MIDI tracks.
2 1 MIDI expanded level 1.
You can insert more than these. These are just a starting template that Ableton gives you. To insert a new MIDI track, you press Control Shift
2 MIDI expanded level
T. I'll undo that.
1 MIDI expanded level.
So Control Shift T will insert MIDI track. Control T
2 audio expanded level
is your audio track.
1 MIDI expanded level.
So MIDI track, Control Shift T, audio track, Control T. That's how you insert, and I mean it's T for track, so that's how you insert the different kinds of tracks that you have. You have MIDI and you have audio. Control Z, obviously, standard Windows keyboard command that undoes anything you've done. Space to play and stop. If you're on the timeline,
Timeline 1 selected on.
nothing's recorded right now, so we can't actually do anything. Shift left and right arrow will select across the timeline. Control Shift left and right arrow will select the start and end selection. Control
1
Control left and Control right does a similar thing. I think that's the start and end. That jumps you to the start and the end of the timeline. So if I had anything recorded on here, which I don't right now, but if I did, I could navigate through the timeline and press play and play and pause where I need, and that will enable me to hear where I can make an edit. So if I need to say if I need to cut something out, like a bit of noise or something like that, if I need to do that, I can. All by use of the timeline. So we know about the track headers, we know what the main track does, and we know what the timeline does. So how do you actually record something? Well, that is done by the F9 key, which is your record to arrangement.
Record to arrangement. Play.
Now, what that did...
Nothing to undo. Command not enabled.
What that did was it gave me a 2-bar count in which you can set in... I can't quite remember. I think it's in your settings, your preferences. It's under... I think... Let me have a quick look.
Settings page chooser grouping. Audio settings page chooser grouping. Audio radio button checked. Theme and color radio button. Audio file and folder radio library radio plugins radio records warp and licenses and updates radio records warp and launch radio button checked.
Record, warp and launch.
Records warp and launch set bit combo box 24 count in combo box 2 bars collapsed.
Yeah, 2 bars. So you can set how long your count in should be. And it's under the setting record, warp and launch, and you press escape to get out of that once you've made the selection.
Untitled star Ableton live 12 data.
So that's how you set what your count in is. It's in record, warp and launch. There are different preferences. We'll get into each of those at a later time. This is just a very basic understanding of how Ableton works. So we have a project open, but we can't actually do anything with it yet because we don't have any instruments. How do we fix that, I hear you ask? Well, it is as simple as
track headers preview 2 MIDI expanded level 1.
Going to your track headers. With 12.1, you can move between the timeline and the track headers by pressing escape. So I press escape. We're on the track headers right now, so I press escape.
Timeline 1 selected on 2 MIDI.
Back to your timeline. Press escape again.
Track headers preview.
Back to the track headers.
Timeline 1 selected on 2 MIDI. Track 2 of 4.
Track headers.
Track headers preview 2 MIDI. 1 MIDI expanded level 1.
Yeah. So I always like to start with the first MIDI track on the track headers. So the very top track, track number 1. I like to start with that because I work sequentially in order. So, but it could be different to, that's different for everyone. It's whatever anyone, however you want to work is how you can do it. But this is how I work sequentially. So, I want a plugin. I want a synthesizer, right? So, to do that, you have to go to your browser. And the way you do that in Ableton is you press Alt and the number 5.
Browser grouping, plugins list, 41 items preview.
And that takes you into the browser. And it's already landed me on the plugins tree view, on the plugins list. So now I'm going to look for a plugin called Nexus.
Restream standalone. Restream reaches react for each standalone reach store wave synapse audio search on source ReFX collapse level 1.
There's ReFX. It's a company that makes Nexus.
Expanded.
You press right arrow to expand it, or you could press.
Collapsed.
I think you can press. No, it'll be.
On source collapse level 1. ReFX collapse level 1. Expanded.
Right arrow. Enter doesn't do anything here. I mean, unless you're selecting the actual plugin, because I was on the tree view.
Collapsed.
Wait, let me see. No,
expanded. ReFX expanded level 1. Nexus state item selected.
Okay. So.
ReFX expanded level 1.
You'll see standard Windows tree view. Collapsed or expanded. So we want to expand the ReFX by pressing right arrow. Go down once.
Nexus state item selected.
And there's Nexus. Now I will load Nexus. You can press enter here.
Nexus/1 Nexus.
And it drops you straight into the plugin window. And now if I press the key on the keyboard, you'll hear Nexus is there. And there is a slight lag because I have to use, in order to make this stream work, because OBS doesn't support ASIO anymore. To my knowledge it used to, but it doesn't now. So I have to use MME DirectX, which puts very, very high lag. See, you can notice from the time I press a key to the time you actually hear the synth note, if I go... It's almost duh, which is not great if you're producing, but for the purposes of demonstration so that you can actually hear what's going on, this is what I have to do. Anything else is convoluted and complicated and all that sort of shit, so we don't want to go through all that because this is it is a right pain in the ass. But anyway, we're now in the Nexus UI window. Now usually when you load a plugin, it will jump you straight to the plugin window. In the cases that it doesn't, you can press Alt 4 to show the controls for the specific plugin that you have loaded. So, but in this case I don't have to do that because Nexus has already kindly placed me inside the plugin window where I can access, so the UI, the actual user interface of Nexus itself, is on my screen right now. Anyone with sight can verify that. So, what do? We have a standard saw wave sound, an init preset. Standard saw wave. So how do we get to the different sounds? Well, it's a combination of things. I feel that if your keyboard has a number pad, you will be making extensive, if you buy Nexus, you will be making extensive use of NVDA's object navigation if you use NVDA, or the JAWS cursor if you use JAWS. But because I'm using NVDA, that's what I'm going to be referring to throughout the course of this tutorial series. So strap in, we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride, but it's nothing that you can't get used to. So, first, what do we need to do? We can tab and shift tab through the Nexus UI, but to make any selections we have to use the object nav. So we have a few things here.
Categories, folders list. Dirty checkbox not checked. Folders list.
I'm not going to worry about
Dirty checkbox not checked.
these.
White checkbox not checked. Spiky checkbox not checked. Active checkbox not checked. Bright checkbox not checked. Dark checkbox not checked. Light button checkbox not checked. Preview volume slider preview 64. Light but dark bright active spiky white check dirty checkbox not folders list.
I'm not going to worry about all those because they're your synth controls. They're quite advanced, so we won't need to. That's for if you're sound designing or something like that. But I may get into a synth design video a little later because I have a synth on here called Surge XT, which is a free synth, a free software synthesizer, and it's a wavetable synth, and you can design all your sounds. But that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is to show you how Ableton operates. So, let's say I want a...
All row 1, column 1. User history folder fact advent chiptune Christmas not selected row 10. Chiptune advent fact folder history user all row 1 no previous. User preset all row 1.
I'm in the folders.
Category list. All row 1, column 1.
We want to be in categories. And here's where you can select your different category of sounds. We've got all...
Arpeggio not selected row 2. Atmosphere not selected row 3. DA bass not selected row 4. DL bell not selected row 5. DR brass not selected row 6. CH chord not selected row 7. CL classical not selected row 8. CH chord not selected row 7.
Say we want chord. Okay? Just for demonstration purposes, let's choose chord. So we have that highlighted, but it's not selected because we haven't clicked on it. And we can use NVDA's invoke gesture to click that, which is, of course, NVDA plus numpad enter.
Invoke CH chord.
Just quickly check this. Right. Okay.
Presets list.
So I've selected chord. Now, when I tabbed, you may have noticed it said
presets list.
Presets list. This is where you can up and down arrow through your presets and use the right arrow to confirm the preset you want to use. So all of these have previews. Let's go through and listen to a few of them. Say I want that one. That sounds pretty cool. So I want that one. So I'm going to press right arrow on my keyboard. And now, if I play the keyboard, now we have that preset selected, and it's a minor chord. So that is how you would select a sound that you want to use for your project. It's going to be a bit difficult for me to record because of the lag that's present right now, because I'm using MME, not ACO. But once I get a new interface, because I am looking at getting an Audient ID44 interface, but once I get that, it'll have loopback enabled, so I won't have to worry about not using ASIO, and I won't have to worry about lag then. But I don't have one of those at the moment. That comes at a later date. So tutorials may improve as time goes by. But now we've got this selected. So what do we do now? Well, if that's the sound you want to use, you can then Alt F4 out of the plugin window.
Untitled star Ableton Live.
And what I usually like to do is go back to Arrangement View with Command 2.
Arrangement grouping track headers preview 1 Nexus expand.
Or Alt 2, I'm sorry. But it would be Command 2 if you were using a Mac. So I'm going to be referring to these with Windows keystrokes. But if you use a Mac and you're using Ableton, it's essentially the same thing. You just substitute Alt with Command. Or Alt with Option, and then you've got your Command Control, that sort of stuff. So, but it's pretty easy to work out. So now, what do we do? We've got our sound, we've got our track selected, everything's ready to go. You press C
Arm track 1 Nexus.
to arm the track. That will arm/disarm. So the track is armed right now, which means, for those of you who aren't familiar with music production, audio production, that sort of thing, arming the track essentially is making it be able to record. Because if it's not armed, it won't record. Although I've never actually had to arm a track unless I'm working with an audio track. A MIDI track just seems to record regardless, but I always arm it just in case. I think it auto arms. Sometimes it will auto arm, and you can have more than one track armed at a time. You just have to select the ones you want, and then press C, and it will arm those selected tracks. But we'll get into that at a later date. So the track is armed. What are we going to do now? What can we do? Well, first of all, I'm going to move over to my keyboard, which is just over to my left here. And hopefully you can still hear me. It's relatively quiet, but I will sound a bit more distant from the mic than I was before. I'm going to reach over here, and I'm going to grab my... Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to leave that there because I won't need it right now. So we have that track is ready to go. Now I have what I'm playing on here is one of Native Instruments keyboards. Excuse me. One of their Complete Control series. This is a Complete Control S61. Highly, highly, highly recommend you get one if you're blind, because they are... no, this isn't an S61, excuse me, it's an A61. The S series is different. Same thing, but it's a different series. But this is an A series, this is an A61. I highly recommend you get one of these if you're blind. They are extremely helpful because you can essentially operate your DAW, digital audio workstation. Ableton will from here on in be referred to sometimes as a DAW, a DAW, digital audio workstation. So if you are blind, you can essentially operate your DAW with this keyboard. You've got... This is in a series on Complete Control. I may do an extra series on those if people want. But I'm pretty sure the people that watch my videos know what a Complete Control keyboard is and what it does. But essentially, the three buttons that you'll use most of all are your stop/rewind, record, and your play. So I can go, let's see, let me just work something out here real quick and I'll record it. First make sure that the metronome is on. It is. Okay. Now, I've got something here. Alright? So, what do I do? How do I get it so that it, is... How do I get it so that you can record it? Well, one of two ways. You can press F9 to record to arrangement. Again, that keyboard command is F9. Or, if you own a Complete Control keyboard like I do, you can press the record button on the keyboard itself and it will do the same thing. So either F9 to record to arrangement or the record button on the Complete Control keyboard. For this demonstration I'm going to use, because I'm over here, I'm going to use the record button on the keyboard, but you can do it other way. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to press record. It's going to count 2 bars. So for those of you who are not musically inclined, a bar is 4 beats. There are 4 beats to a bar. So you would count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. That's how you count bars. For those of you who are not entirely musically inclined, but I'm assuming people that are going to watch these videos are musically inclined, so I won't explain it too much. But so what's going to happen is it's going to count. It's going to click it's going to click for 2 bars. So remember, the metronome sounds like this. That's the metronome. How I love that sound. And before the release of Ableton 12.1, or before the release of Ableton 12 even, blind people have never been able to have access to Ableton. So this sound would strike jealousy into the hearts of most of us, because we were never able to use this program until now. So it honestly strikes me as odd sometimes to hear coming out of my headphones, because usually it's either or, not. Sorry, I still get weirded out by that. Anyway, side note aside, all that funny stuff and things like that aside, let's record something. So I'm going to press the record button on the keyboard. It's going to go click, 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 click. It's going to do that 2 times, and then I'm going to play to the best I can with lag, because as you know, there's a lot of it. But here we go. Right, I have that recorded. But if I play that back, you'll notice. Turn the metronome off. Actually, no, I'll keep it on. It plays back exactly as I recorded it. It's not quantized. How do we do that? Well, this is where the computer keyboard comes into handy, because now, and that's another method of input that you can have as well. You can use your computer keyboard essentially as a MIDI keyboard, but I don't recommend doing that unless you don't have access to a keyboard. You can, in fact, that's how I started. Not with Ableton, but when I started using GarageBand, I started with the computer keyboard to play my stuff. But I recommend you get yourself a keyboard. They're relatively inexpensive. They are expensive, but they're not as expensive as some other instruments on the market or interfaces or anything like that. So if you can afford it, definitely get one. But if you don't have access to one, use the computer keyboard. It's just as easy. And the way you access that, by the way, is you access that overlay by pressing M.
Enable computer keyboard mode.
That's M for MIDI, M for me. So you press the letter M on your keyboard, and now you get, and that was done with the computer keyboard. But I don't need that, so I'm going to press M to get rid of that overlay.
Disable computer keyboard mode.
And, because of the accessibility, the screen reader tells you everything. It tells you exactly what you did, which is very nice. It's awesome. So, quantizing. What do we do? Well, we first make sure
fixed grid on 1/16.
Fixed grid is on, and to do that you press Control 5. Control and the number 5 turns fixed grid on. All the functions across your number row are going to be accessed with either Control or Alt. To get into the MIDI editor, you press Alt 3.
Clip detail grouping, clip nexus 1 grouping.
Or the clip editor. MIDI editor, clip view, whatever you want to call it. This is the MIDI editor. You can move notes around, and yes, you can do that accessibly with Ableton and NVDA or VoiceOver or whatever. You can do that accessibly. Completely accessible. And in fact, I'm going to show you.
Options Alt plus O.
Go to Options. You'll go down to
Edit MIDI, edit key, Mac computer, MIDI note editor preview M.
MIDI note editor preview. So we are in the MIDI editor. this is the preview, so as you move through notes, you will hear what's highlighted.
Check MIDI note editor preview.
So now that I've done that, I'm at the beginning.
Move 24 notes to -1.4. Move 24 notes to 1 to 4.4.
Oops, shouldn't have done that.
All notes steadily.
Yeah, there we go.
-1.4.
I forgot I did that.
1. -1.4.1. Undo move notes. Undo move notes. Undo record.
Hang on.
Redo record. Flip the tail grouping. Flip nexus. 1 grouping. 1. 1. 1.1.2. 1. 1.
Okay, so I am on the first note. I'm not going to actually do anything with these, but I just want to show you that you can do this.
1.11.
So here we are on the first note here.
1.1.1.1.1.1.1.2. 1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.1.
arrow to go through the notes. I'll get into the MIDI editor in more detail again in another video. This is going to be a whole tutorial series. But essentially I just wanted to show you that you can absolutely edit your MIDI notes, which is something that Logic users have been wanting for decades, but we never got. So, Ableton's a bit of a step ahead on the curve for that one. So, yeah. Sorry, Logic users. Unfortunately, the MIDI editor is still a pain in the ass. I'm sorry. That's how it is, unfortunately. And I wish I could say otherwise, but it's not. But, anyway, all that aside, how do we quantize this thing? Well, we first need to select the grid value to which you're going to quantize your notes. Now, I played this in 16ths because I went... So obviously we're going to want to quantize that in 16th notes. Now, it is already selected, but if it wasn't, that particular time video grid value is selected. But if it wasn't, what you would do is you would use Control and Alt if you want to use your number row for most of Ableton's functions. But in this case, Control, you hold that down and press numbers 1 and 2. 1 will widen the grid, and 2 will shorten it.
1/8 widen grid.
No, excuse me. 2 will widen the grid.
1/16 narrow grid.
And 1 will narrow the grid. Excuse me, I kind of screwed up there. So, this is in 16th. So, let me see.
1/8 widen grid.
Not that time.
1/16 narrow grid.
There we go. That's what we want. 1/16 narrow grid. And every time you push those those key commands, those key combinations, the screen reader again will read exactly what is happening. Okay, so we've got the right value selected. I'm just going to quickly...
1306.
Oof, okay, I'm going to have to finish up here very soon. We've got those values selected. Now, is it quantized?
Play. Stop.
No, it is not, because we still have to select all of these notes, and that is a standard Windows keyboard command. Control A.
Select all.
Select all. Now, we have our time set. We have the note selected. Now, all you need to do, this is so easy, all you need to do is press Control and the letter U and...
Quantized.
Quantized. So now if I play it back, it's snapped. So essentially what quantizing means for you non-musicians out there, quantizing is essentially snapping it to the nearest beat on the grid. So you have a beat grid, and you have, music is beats and bars, of course. So you have a beat grid with bars and all that sort of stuff. So essentially what I've just done is snapped all the notes to the nearest beat grid, and this is a staple in electronic music production. which is essentially, Ableton was designed for electronic music producers like myself. So, it was originally meant for DJs, for them to do their live sets. Ableton is made by electronic music production artists for electronic music production artists. So that's a bit of a backstory on that. But anyway, the notes have been quantized. So now if I play, because if you'll remember, I'll undo this.
Undo quantize.
And if you'll remember,
Play. Stop.
I played that pretty well on beat. But it can get better. I will quantize it. And now,
play. Stop.
As you can hear, perfectly on beat. Not a waver. No off beats, no nothing. Just perfect harmony. Very perfect harmony. Which is what we want in music. But, so that's done. We've got a track recorded. Well, some of the track, anyway. I think the last thing I'll show you in this tutorial
Arrangement group in track headers 3
is the preference window. So, of course, you need to save your work. Save. I cannot tell you how many times when I was using Reaper, which I don't use much anymore since I got Ableton, but I was using Reaper to do this very same stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I forgot to save my track, Reaper crashed, and I've been working away for 10-15 minutes, and I lost everything because of a crash. I cannot stress to you enough how important saving is. Control S will take care of that.
Save live set as dialog. File name. Combo box collapsed. Head alt plus N selected untitled blank selection.
Standard Windows save dialog. See, it's all very standard. Very standard. Same with Mac OS. Standard dialogues. So let's call this
space N O T E L D A space R space A D A D A A D A space R O F space L space F space F R T space F O F space A.
Tutorial track for Ableton, because I'm going to work on this throughout the series.
Items Ableton project info not selected 1 of 3.
Now,
items view list 715 crease cover prop.
When you save something, if you have Ableton, you haven't done anything with it yet, you've made a track, you've saved it, the computer will automatically, in your documents folder, it will automatically make a directory for Ableton, which is where all your projects are saved. It will automatically do that.
Names, file name, combo box collapsed, head alt plus N selected tutorial track for Ableton. Save toolbar, save button alt pressed.
So
Save live set.
And that's it, track saved. And you can actually tell that it is saved because
tutorial track for Ableton, Ableton Live 12 beta.
Notice it when I read the title bar, it says tutorial track for Ableton. If I make a change, so let's
arrangement
say
group in input monitor output track solos arm recording check track volume slider 0.
I just
minus 1.0.
I just do that, right? I just adjusted the volume down and back up again. But now, if I read the title bar, you remember it said tutorial track for Ableton. But now if I read the title bar again,
tutorial track for Ableton star Ableton Live 12 beta.
You notice it said star. That is a very good indication that your track may not be saved or is not saved. So you just press Control S.
Save live set.
And done. Live set saved. Or save live set. Because Ableton, they don't call them projects, they call them live sets. So an Ableton live set file is a .als file. That is all your tracks. It's essentially, that's Ableton's file system, is .als, which stands for Ableton Live Set. That's how Ableton makes. That's their file extension. That's their file format. Is ALS, and which stands for Ableton Live Set. All right. So that feature, that when it says star, is a really good indication that your track is not saved and that you should save it, which I think is really cool. No other, as far as I'm aware, no other DAW does that.
Save live set command not enabled.
And if you're still not sure, with the release of Ableton 12, one of the updates, I think it was before 12.1 even, but the release of Ableton 12, I don't know what update it was, but it started doing this.
Save live set command not enabled.
Never used to do that with the first ever release of Ableton 12. Never used to do that. What did it do? It told me command not enabled, which means you can't do that right now because A, it's already been done, or B, it's not the right command. So if you're not sure, rather than just, saying nothing, and you're thinking, why isn't it working? What's going on? What's going on here? It now tells you command not enabled, which means you can't do that right now. It's Ableton's way of going, no, excuse me, can't do that right now. Anyway, got the track saved. And now, for the final part of this tutorial, I know it's gone on a long time, and I need to finish up, because it is now
13:14.
nearly 1:15. But for the final part of this tutorial, I'll give you a brief glance at the preferences area, or the settings area.
Settings page chooser grouping records warp and launch radio button check.
Accessed by, you press Control comma, and that gets you into settings. We have a few options here.
Records settings page chooser group.
And again, you can tab and shift tab and up and down arrow and all that stuff that you're used to. It's all here.
Plugins radio library silent link audio theme and colors displayed and licenses and update records warp plugins radio library silent folder link tempo and audio radio button checked.
Let's start with audio. So we have audio.
Link tempo and MIDI radio button checked.
Link tempo and MIDI.
Silent folder radio button checked.
File and folder.
Library radio button checked.
Library.
Plugins radio button checked.
Plugins.
Records warp and launch radio button.
Record warp and launch.
Licenses and updates radio button checked.
Licenses and updates. Again, record warp and launch is where you'll set your metronome count in.
Record licenses and updates radio button.
Licenses and updates.
Display and input radio button checked.
Display and input.
Theme and colors radio button checked.
Theme and colors, so those are visual.
Audio radio button checked.
And we're back to audio. So let's start with audio. What's in here?
Audio settings grouping. Audio driver type combo box M.
You tab to get to the main settings. Now, audio driver. This is where you would select ACO, MME, DirectX, which is what I'm running right now because I can't stream this with ASIO. So that's where you'd select your audio driver type. The next one.
Audio input device combo box microphone. Boost no ball. EX collapsed.
That's where you select your input device. So microphones, channel input, that sort of thing.
Audio output device combo box speakers. Because
Output, that's speakers, headphones, sort of thing. So you can actually hear what's coming out of the system.
configure inputs button.
Configure inputs. I haven't actually been in there too much. There's a few things you can mess with in there, like you can configure the way the inputs work, what type of input it is, I think.
Configure outputs button.
Configure outputs, essentially the same thing, but for your outputs.
And slash out sample read combo box 44100 collapsed.
Now this is important. This is very important. People who know audio will know all too well the importance of sample rate. Do not use a sample rate more or less than your interface can handle, because you will get very nasty things happen. Do not do it. Set your sample rate to a comfortable medium so that your interface doesn't have a shit fit. Or whatever you're using, your audio system doesn't have a shit fit, because sample rate is everything in audio. Absolutely everything. It is sometimes the be-all and end-all of audio files, and I cannot tell you how many audio files I have heard that have been saved at the wrong sample rate, and they sound like trash. Literally, they are horrible. If you've ever heard a bad MP3 file where it's all, that's to do with the sample rate. Back in the day, It was, look, I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, I don't have time for that. I could go on for hours about sample rate. But anyway, you want to leave this more or less at default. You don't really want to mess with it too much unless you know that your interface is capable of handling a higher or lower sample rate. Always higher.
Default SR and pitch conversion button high quality.
Default SR and pitch conversion is set to high quality. I think that's sample rate and pitch conversion. I think SR is sample rate.
Input buffer size slider 752 samples.
This is going to matter as well. This is your input buffer size. So when you play a note on the keyboard, for example, when you play a note like that, you can set the buffer rate, you can set the buffer size to hopefully cut down on lag, but also be aware that when you set buffer size, you may get popping and crackling because it's all about how much your computer can actually handle. My system's pretty decent, it's got 32 gig of RAM, so it can handle quite a lot before bugging out completely. But I tend to leave the buffer size where it is because I use ASIO, and I've got it set perfectly to where it needs to be.
Output buffer size slider 752 samples.
This is your output buffer size, essentially the same thing, but for your outputs.
Driver error compensation amount slider 0.00.
Driver error amount compensation. So if your driver, has a shit fit and crashes, I'm not exactly sure what this does. I think it tries to compensate so that the driver doesn't crash, I think.
Driver error compensation unit button MS.
The unit is set to ms or milliseconds.
Test tone button off.
Test tone. Now this is good to check your setup. If your setup is not working, you won't hear anything. But if you press this button,
on.
That's a test tone, which you can adjust.
Test tone volume slider minus 36 decibel.
You can adjust the volume of it.
Test tone frequency slider 440 Hz.
And the frequency. So if I want to bump it up to, let's say,
test 0, 2, 1, blank. Test tone frequency slider 120 Hz.
Oops, that's not what I wanted.
Test tone frequency slider 1.20 kHz.
Where's that?
Test tone frequency slider 1.00 kHz.
There's your standard sensor beat. 1K, 1 kilohertz, 1000 kilohertz tone. No. What am I saying? Look at me, I'm a fucking audio engineer. No, I don't even know what I'm talking about. 1000 hertz, no, a 1 kilohertz tone. 1000 hertz. That is your standard sensor beep. That you might find that interesting.
Test tone button on. Off.
Let's turn that off.
Test tone volume slider minus 36 decibel.
You've got the volume of that, you've got the frequency.
CPU usage simulator amount slider 50%.
CPU usage amounts simulator.
Settings page chooser grouping. Audio radio button check. Audio settings grouping. CPU usage simulator amount slider 50%.
That's how much CPU your audio is going to use, I think. I haven't actually played around with that, so I don't know. I just tend to leave everything default, because if it works, why change it?
Settings page chooser grouping. Audio radio.
Next thing we've got.
Link tempo and MIDI radio button checked.
This is your MIDI setup.
MIDI settings grouping. Show link toggle button show unavailable. Start stop sync button off unavailable.
Start stop sync.
Show tempo follower toggle button hide.
Show tempo follower.
Input channel external in combo box 1/2 collapsed. Show resync button hide. Control surfaces preview. Control surfaces date item selected. Remote script 1 type combo box complete. Control A collapsed.
This is where you set up your control surfaces.
Remote script 1 input device combo box complete. Control A dot collapsed. Remote script 1 output device combo box complete. Control A dot collapsed. Upload presets to controller 1. Control surfaces date item selected. Remote script 2 type combo box launch collapsed. Remote script 2 input device combo box Novation USB audio device collapsed. Remote script 2 output device combo box Novation USB audio device collapsed. Upload presets to controller 2 button unavailable. Control surfaces date item selected. Remote script 3 type combo box none collapsed. Remote script 3 input device combo box none collapsed. Remote script 3 output upload presets to control surfaces date item selected. Remote script 4 type combo box none collapsed.
So essentially these remote scripts, if you have control surfaces connected to Ableton like I do, I have a MIDI, I have my complete control keyboard, and I also have this little thing, a Novation Launchpad Mini. It's a Launchpad Mini 10, which I just started using. So I'm still working out how to use the thing, but I'm getting there. I might even do a separate demo on that anyway. But essentially it's a sample pad. But anyway, these remote scripts control what the device is doing.
Remote script 4 input device combo box none collapsed. Remote script 4 upload presets to controller 4 button unavailable. Control surfaces data item selected. Remote script 5 type remote upload
Anyway.
remote upload presets take over remote loop the internal MIDI take over control surfaces preview control surfaces data item selected. Upload presets to controller 6 button unavailable. Take over remote combo box none collapsed.
You can have up to 6 controllers connected at a time.
Loop the take over remote combo box none collapsed.
Takeover mode.
Loop the internal MIDI input track checkbox checked.
Loopy internal MIDI.
Take over remote combo box none collapsed.
I don't know what that does. I don't want to mess with it because it might put something off.
Loop the internal MIDI input track checkbox checked.
MIDI.
Loop the internal MIDI input sync checkbox not checked.
Sync.
Loop the internal MIDI input remote control checkbox not checked. Loop the internal MIDI MPE mode checkbox not checked. Complete controller 61 MIDI input track checkbox checked. Complete controller 61 MIDI input sync checkbox not checked. Complete controller 61 MIDI input remote control checkbox not checked. Complete controller 61 MIDI MPE mode checkbox not checked. Complete controller input. Complete controller DAW MIDI input track checkbox checked.
These are all your MIDI inputs, so you can change the modes.
Comp launch with input launch auto map MIDI input auto map MIDI input track checkbox checked.
I don't mess with them.
Auto map propeller as MIDI input remote control check auto map propeller MPE auto map propeller as mixer MIDI input track checkbox auto Microsoft GS Audible Microsoft loopy internal complete controller output complete launch auto map
Yeah, outputs.
auto map propeller.
I'm not going to go through it. There's so many options.
MIDI auto map settings to MIDI settings grouping show settings page chooser grouping link tempo and MIDI.
And then we're back to this. So now, next setting.
File and folder radio button checked.
File and folder, that's to do with where Ableton's going to save everything to.
Library radio button checked.
Library, that's to do with internal libraries or onboard libraries.
Plugins radio button checked.
Plugins, that's all your plugins. That's where you would go to scan plugins in. So if you downloaded new plugins and they're not showing up, you come in here and you
Plugin settings grouping rescan plugins button.
You click this button, rescan plugins, which I won't do because it takes a little while.
Settings page chooser grouping plugins radio.
The more plugins you have, the longer it takes. So that's where you would come in to fix that.
Records warp and launch radio button checked.
And then we're back to record, warp, and launch.
Licenses and updates radio button checked.
Licenses and updates.
Licenses and maintenance grouping. Authorize at Ableton.com button.
This is where you would come to authorize your... if it doesn't show up when you first download the program, this is where you would come to authorize licenses.
Authorize offline button. Settings page chooser grouping. Licenses and updates radio button.
And that's all that's in there.
Display and input radio button checked.
Display and input. This is visual, so I won't worry about that.
Theme and color radio button checked.
Again, visual.
Audio radio button.
And then we're back to audio. So that's your preferences.
Tutorial track for Ableton. Ableton Live 12. Save live set. Command not enabled.
Just make sure that's saved. It is. Although I could have just as easily listened to the title bar, but I didn't do that. So for now, I think that's enough now. So we're going to quit Ableton. And the way we do that is we press Control and Q.
Ops 30.1.
And it's gone. And we're back to OBS.
Start virtual. Stop recording.
Right here. So that is essentially the first tutorial of this series. Understanding Ableton. Understanding Ableton's UI. So that will be uploaded. I'll upload that as soon as I can. And when I've got a bit more time, I'll upload that as soon as I can. And yes, that will be uploaded momentarily. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment on the video. Look, I'm not going to go into the like, subscribe thing. Everyone does it. But please, if you have any questions, or if you need me to clarify something, leave a comment on either YouTube, on either the video, or alternatively for you blind viewers who use the Audio Games Forum, I will upload a link to this video. I'll upload a link to this video once it's published, and I'll post it on the forum, and you guys can check it out there. So if you have any comments, leave them either on YouTube or make a post on the forum, and I will try to answer your questions as best as I know how. There's still a lot. Be aware that there are still things that I don't know about Ableton, because I haven't been using it for very long, only a couple of months. So I'm still learning as well. But any new tips that I pick up, I will share, because it's important that people know this. Anyway, I'm waffling on too much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.